Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Well, hello, my friends. Welcome to the Kyle Seraphin Show. Today is Wednesday. It is March the 12th. I'm feeling particularly energetic today. I don't know why. Maybe it's because Austin continues to have the most schizophrenic weather that we could have. The other day, it was 30 degrees when I drove over to the old house, the studio where we're at right now. And then by the end of the day, it was like in the 70s and I was sweating. And then this morning, it was kind of in the low 60s again. We're having this like wild swings back and forth. Can't decide. Kind of classic Texas weather. The old joke when I was growing up used to be that if you didn't like the weather in Texas, just wait a minute, which is obviously true. Weird things happening, though, in Austin, Texas. We're going to talk a little bit about the story. Two different folks associated with InfoWars having a rough gig, one of whom was murdered, the other whom was swatted, and that's almost like an attempted murder. Happened twice yesterday, and I was talking to Chase Geiser this morning, so their family is okay, but pretty wild, pretty strange stuff. So a lot of this stuff has to do with, I think, the coming turmoil. And I don't do atmospherics to get people amped up, and I certainly don't do things to get you more riled up than necessary. But I do think it's worth noting that we are in a very strange time. We got a little bit of traction with Donald Trump's administration coming in. We've seen a lot of movement in a positive way. We've also seen a lot of things sort of distractionary. And so we're going to try to cut through some of that noise and get into the signal of what is going on. What is happening today, whether it be talking about DOGE cuts happening at the Department of Education, whether it be talking about peace deals or the potential peace deal happening in Ukraine. What else do I got on here? Bernie Sanders is apparently the new hero of the Democrat Party again. The new old hero, a man who's 83 years old, is going to save their party. They're obviously also floating out Gavin Newsom. So Democrats still kind of in disarray trying to figure out what the answer is because they still haven't come to grips with how do we solve the problem of Donald Trump. It's like The Sound of Music, except with an old white guy who happens to be a billionaire and not a young, pretty nun who was played by Julie Andrews. I think it was right. Is it Julie Andrews? You guys tell me in the chat. All right. Before we get any deeper into the weeds today, before we start, pressing in to the stories of the day, let's go ahead and say thanks to the folks that are fueling today's morning, which is the folks over at Blackout Coffee. And you can get yours at blackoutcoffee.com/Kyle. I've been kind of waiting on this one this week, and we just got a couple of bags in, and the bag that we cracked open is called Pitch Black. So, folks, we're about to put you onto something that will change the way that you start your day. It obviously got mine rocking this morning. Blackout Coffee isn't just coffee. It is, in fact, a wake-up call, a call to rise and grind, which I do mornings. I go ahead and turn the knob to an 8 out of 16, and we brew up 2 liters of coffee at a time. You can push harder. You never have to compromise for what you stand for because it's not the average cup of joe. It's a bag of Blackout Coffee, roasted with purpose, packed with bold flavor, and fueled by the kind of values that built this country. Grit, determination, refusal to look back, not greed, envy, sloth, and some of the other deadly sins we're going to talk about. They don't just make coffee, they make a statement. Blackout Coffee is stepping up to add more warriors to get your orders out faster. That means when you hit the order now button, you are going to get coffee coming fresh and ready to your door to fuel to your next moves. Yes. Whether you're powering through the daily grind, chasing down big goals, or you just don't want to accept mediocrity, Blackout Coffee's got your back. It's blackoutcoffee.com/KYLE. Don't drink coffee, drink Blackout. Get 20% off your first order with KYLE. Link is in the show description. Doesn't matter where you're watching. And yeah, let's do that. Okay, let's get into this thing because there's a ton. Let's go. Yep. We got to fuel up. We are still going. Okay. So for all of you that joined me for the first time today, thanks so much for joining us. Here's the way the program works. We started off with a little bit of a teaser of what we're going to do. We try to come at it hot, heavy, and extra fast, and I talk as quickly as I can think, and sometimes I accidentally talk a little more quickly than I think, and that gets really weird for everybody. So if you're joining us and you were part of Barry Cunningham's program last night, thanks for being there. That was one of the more fun interviews I've done in a while. It's always nice to introduce sort of a lot of topics really, really fast and all at once. And when we talk about the FBI, man, you are in my wheelhouse and I know the problems. It turns out those problems that exist over the FBI are also problems that exist throughout the federal government. And it doesn't matter Whether you are part of any government agency, if you spent any time working in Washington, D.C., and you're a critical mind and you're libertarian minded, if you're a small government, lowercase c conservative the way that I am, then you see the problems like this. And so this kind of a headline actually sounds celebratory, as opposed to what CBS is saying. Department of Education announces cutting nearly 50% of its workforce. They're very sad about this. They support the workers suddenly. This is classic, and this goes down to the basic premise that I have, which is that leftists believe that government is in fact the god of their leftist religion. And I don't say that lightly, because if you've listened to any of the stuff that I did when I was working with Catholic Vote and some of the stuff that we've done with Edify, which is one of the subsidiaries, it's kind of like a Catholic PragerU, the concept that leftism lives in the space of a bona fide religious organization. They have priests, they have sacraments, which have included abortion and penance for climate change. They have their own set of values that don't necessarily align with things. They have beliefs that you have to take on faith, as my buddy George calls them, the climate pagans. So you have to actually believe that this Department of Education, which costs us nearly $270 billion, that's billion with a B, $270 billion, and they, even by their own volition, do less than 5% of the work out there for the states. You have to believe this. So not only are we covering it on CBS, I also see a really nice editorial. I see more pieces of it done over at NBC. And then lastly, I see an actual article, op-ed written by Randy Weingartner, the screaming demon that runs the, American Federation of Teachers, who makes $500,000 a year, by the way, advocating on behalf of teachers. So business is pretty good. Anytime that you can bring in $500,000 a year and you get to go back and claim that you were part of some sort of organization at one point in time, she always references the fact that she used to teach at a school. She makes a lot of money going after this. And that is the problem. The problem is that the Department of Education exists. It is by its own sort of definition wasteful. We've had schools in the United States. We have educated people probably better. Consider this in your life. If somebody told you that they went to MIT in 2020, let's say they just graduated. They got in there 5 years ago and they just got out and now they're in the workforce. Are you going to look at an MIT graduate who graduated in the class of 2024, undergraduate, let's say, the same as you would as someone who graduated in 1974? Because I don't. Because I've met people from both of those categories. I've seen what it looked like. What we've seen is the watering down of education. One of the things that a million things that I did in my lifetime, which has been packed in. My buddies used to give me the hard time. If you've seen the movies from the X-Men, they have this guy Wolverine, and Wolverine basically lives forever. He's like 300 years old because he keeps healing. I don't heal the way I used to, as evidenced by the burn that I have on my finger right now that my kids are really worried about because it hasn't healed in overnight. But I've done a lot of things in a very short amount of time. At 43 years old, when I was a senior in college, I think the first time, but maybe the second time, when I was a senior in college, I was a teaching assistant for an American federal government course. And essentially, we taught politics 101. We really did. We taught American federal government. So we taught people, what is the structure of the United States? What is this government that we live under? And I was absolutely shocked. It was a freshman level course, but we had people all the way, people that had put it off to their senior year. So there were people that were 22 years old. There were people that were 18 years old. And between 18 and 22, now this goes back to 2004. This is a 21-year-old experience that I had. When I'm seeing this stuff, I was blown away 21 years ago with the illiterate rates and the absolute inability to grasp simple questions that I had in our students. And a lot of that came from the Department of Education. It came from lowering standards and watering down standards and putting more money into the schools, but they didn't put it into better teaching, better technologies, better tactics and techniques. They weren't trying to improve the process. They brought on more administrators. So in my lifetime, since I've left any academic circle, I have watched the bloat, and the disgusting bloat, that is, of how many assistant vice principals we've had and how many people that were involved in the various parts of the administration. We spend more now per capita, not just because of inflation, but we spend more per capita per student than we ever have. And we're getting lower and lower results. So gutting the Department of Education, that's a win. Fox News announced this the other day. This is kind of like crappy audio, but we're going to play it anyway just because I think it's worth knowing. They were first told to stay home. And then after everybody was told Wednesday is the day off where we're going to figure out who's going to get reduced in force, Then we find out a little bit more, and it's like they're going to cut as much as half of it. I think they should cut more, and hopefully they do. But this is Fox News announcing it. We'll run to that real quick.
Right now, senior Fox Business correspondent Charles Gasparino reporting that the Education Department employees have been told that they must vacate their offices in D.C. and the regions by 6 o'clock tonight, and that the offices will be closed on Wednesday for security reasons.
All right. The thing that I am always advocating for when it comes to government shutdown, it's not because I think the government is inherently great to shut down, although it's fine. It doesn't really bother me, especially the federal government. The thing that happens during every government shutdown, and the thing that I was hoping they could have actually shut down the government for like a week before they did the fork email that OPM put out. You guys will remember there was an email that went out and said basically you can choose a fork in the road. You could try to stick around and see it out if we're going to get rid of you, or you could opt out right now and you can get paid all the way through the end of the fiscal year, which is an option you could take. And you're just hedging your bet. The nice thing about a government shutdown is whenever they do, we divide categories, kind of like during COVID, into two categories of essential and non-essential workers. If you work for the federal government and the thing shuts down and they determine that you are non-essential, in other words, you don't have to show up at work. They're going to back pay you anyway. They're probably going to cut you a check for the time that you're home. So it ends up being a late funded vacation, if you will. But if you're unnecessary when things shut down because the finances are there, because we don't have a continuing resolution in place or whatever. If that's the case, why do you work there in the first place? As someone who worked in Washington, D.C. for 5 years, who used to drive in during the government shutdowns, because as a law enforcement guy, I was considered to be essential, an essential employee. I loved it. It was great. The traffic was tolerable. The buildings were not blocked up. Getting into the parking garages was easy. All the people that needed to be there were there. All the people that were useless and didn't spend any time doing anything of value for the American people, they were gone. I spent most of my time doing all of the things that I was supposed to do anyway. It was like, hey, I need to get reimbursed for this. I got to fill out the form. I got to bring it up to the person. I've got to babysit it through the process. I've got to call them up and ask them if they filled it out properly. I have to call them and tell them that they gave the money to my friend Miles instead of me. This is a real story, actually. I got a check cut one time to one of my buddies because we both filed for the same amount of money 2 weeks separately, and they paid someone else instead of me as a reimbursement for stuff that I had to buy for the job. They constantly are awful at what they do. The federal government, and this was just obviously the FBI, but the FBI actually hires people with a top secret clearance. Imagine the people that don't need a clearance that work in the federal government. It's atrocious. So when you hear stories like this, and I made reference to this last night when I was talking to Barry Cunningham, the same story is like, I want to see deeper cuts than you think is necessary. It doesn't matter if it's DOE, it doesn't matter if it's DOJ, or if it's FBI, it doesn't matter where it is. If it's ATF, just cut the whole damn thing out because we don't need them. Seriously, we don't need them. They started off as a tax organization. There was no law enforcement mission for the ATF. It was created specifically to go after taxes. And then when nobody else wanted them over in the Treasury Department, they floated over and somehow ended up at DOJ. They almost got cut in the 90s. Do you realize that the Waco tragedy, which was tragic because people died, even though the ATF instigated it, even though I'm pretty confident that the Davidians killed themselves, and I say that as someone who has a father who spent hours on the phone with David Koresh personally. This is something that my family's been part of for a very long time. The story that happened at Ruby Ridge where they went after Randy Weaver, the reason that those big splashy raids happened and the FBI had to get involved and people ended up dead was because the ATF was trying to make a name for itself to justify its condition, to justify its own budget. How many times do we see massive SWAT rollouts and or law enforcement actions specifically for one thing only? Because they want to show you that they exist and justify the spending to prove that they're not non-essential, when in fact they might be non-essential. Imagine if you had, some of you guys know that I'm kind of a gun guy, so I have some suppressors. I don't own any SBRs, but if I did, that's a short-barreled rifle. If I wanted to own one, it would cost me $200 to own my own property, to buy a tax stamp, the same way you have a tax stamp on liquor or on tobacco. You'd get a tax stamp on this thing. You pay the government $200 for the privilege of owning something, and then you got to tell them where it is. Imagine if I didn't have that tax stamp and I wanted to create a short-barrel rifle, and I did it so illegally. It's actually punishable by a 10-year felony, and they're going to come at you as aggressively as possible. Now, if you're a gangster in California and you happen to be hiding your short barrel rifle with like 1.5 pounds of methamphetamines that are in some baggies, you're probably going to go to county jail for 10 years. If they come after me, a father of 4 who used to be a federal law enforcement officer, they're going to throw me in jail for up to 10 years. I guarantee you they will come at me as hard as they can. And why? when they should be issuing like a ticket, like, hey man, that's actually an SBR, you've got to file a tax stamp until we can get rid of it. Do you know who's been in favor of getting rid of that stuff? Tom Massey. One of the other reasons why I love the guy. He doesn't believe in gun control. We're going to bring him up in the CR because obviously we talked about it yesterday. Donald Trump was targeting him. Here's Kevin O'Leary. He's sitting on CNN. He's done it on Fox. I've seen him say it in multiple places. The answer is cut deeper. We can always hire more federal government. That's the nature of government. It wants to grow. It desires growth for its own sake, not for the sake of the mission. So we're never going to have a hard time getting more government. We can very easily cut as much as we can while we have the momentum. And that's the advisement that I would give to anybody in the Trump administration. It's the thing that you're hearing people who have a ton of money and guys who are regular guys running a little podcast right now say. If that's the case, come on now. We need to get more aggressive, not less aggressive. Now is not the time to pull off the gas.
Just the recipients, but also the farmers that are there able to purchase from. That's the main reason it's a DO, a Department of Agriculture.
This issue is not going to go away because it's very contentious. But when you cut in any organization, government or private, it's very demoralizing. It's traumatic, and it gets lots of bad press, as we're doing right now. But that's why you cut 20% more. I think Elon's not cutting enough. Cut 20% more now. Get your spreadsheet out. These are the names. Whack everybody, and then 20% more, as we do in the private sector every day and have done for 100 years in private equity, and hire back when the organization gels. That way, the demoralization only happens once. You don't want to cut multiple times. More whacking.
But let me just, can I explain to you that this is when running.
You don't need to explain it to me. I know how it works.
But no, you don't, because
actually,
when
I do. I've done it multiple times.
I love it. He's like, stop telling me. I know. I've gone through and gutted companies. The federal government is not a company, not in a traditional sense, because it doesn't create a product, and it certainly doesn't do a service that is like accountable to the people. And yet, it needs to be handled like a business for at least a little while to try to get some financial solvency. The new talking point being marched out by the political left is like, oh my God, we're going to have a recession. Yeah, that's what happens when you print too much money, when you act financially irresponsible. You have to have what are called austerity measures. We've seen it in other countries. Should you be using the term whacking, as I see my friends over here on the chat are saying? No, whacking is probably not the best way to use it. It's not the best phraseology or terminology, but so be it, okay? You need to get rid of more people and I'll tell you why. When you look at the way that the political left considers money, when they think about the concept of money, look what's on the screen right here. This is part of the op-ed that was written in MSNBC. This is written by Randy Weingartner. Again, I think she's kind of like a screaming demon. I don't ever want to hear what she has to say, so I'm going to spare you the clip. Trump's education department crusade is a cowardly betrayal of America's children. Isn't it always interesting that the people with no children, with no skin in the game, are the most to be able to hide behind the children like human shields to try to get their garbage political agenda? I scrolled halfway down through her article. I'm reading through it. It's just platitudes and nonsense. And then I got to what it really comes down to. This is actually one of the 7 deadly sins, is it not? Why would anyone, this is her quote, why would anyone allow Elon Musk to steal that money, which Congress appropriated for the children, to pay for tax breaks for the rich and corporations? I want to stop where we're standing and evaluate that sentence, because it's not the first time that I've heard it. I heard it from AOC the other day. I hear it from Bernie Sanders types. I hear it from people that are major voices on the political left. We want to take the money that Congress has appropriated for children. We're going to steal it to give tax breaks to the rich and the corporations. Everything about that explains to you exactly why these people should not be in charge of anything. It's not their money. It's never been their money. You can go back to Maggie Thatcher's statement about OPM. At some point in time, the problem with socialism or communism is you run out of OPM. That's other people's money. You're not paying for the tax breaks with money that is appropriated by Congress for children. You're paying for the children's appropriations through Congress from people's money who earned it. The government cannot earn money. It doesn't earn money. It hasn't. This is why I'm interested in this Trump idea of a sovereign wealth fund, where the U.S. government owns some things and is able to actually have some sort of like appreciable assets, right? If you have an asset, it actually earns for you. Almost everything in the government is a loss. It's a liability. It's a thing that costs. And that's how you have this weird upside down world where the argument is that a tax break is paid for by stealing Like, it's stealing from children. The children don't make any money. The people who are rich in this country pay the vast majority of the taxes. We've done it multiple times. I've shown you where the tax burden falls. If you're like in the bottom 50% of this country, you pay almost none of the taxes. Almost none. I think it's like a single digit percentage. I should go back and revisit this. But the top 10% of earners in this country pay far more than 10% of the burden. And what's crazy is that you have people that are billionaires and millionaires that are advocating for these positions. How can that be? You know, you got the Bernie Sanders. I'm going to end up doing the Bernie Sanders voice at some point, right? You've got Bernie Sanders and he's going, oh, the millionaires and the billionaires. He's a millionaire. He's worth like, I don't know, $10, $12 million, maybe slightly more. And he made it writing books that nobody cared about, that no one's ever heard of. Probably picked up by other people's campaigns. We've covered this ad nauseum before. You can't have that. How come billionaires like Soros and others are out there advocating on behalf of these policies? Is it because they can afford it? Is it because they dodge it? This is the same thing we heard Chris Cuomo talking about on the floor of the DNC, that you have people inside the Democrat Party that are the useful idiots, the talking heads, the walking forward, the marching troops that are gathering and knocking on doors. And then you have the elites literally sitting in the box seats above the arena floor, looking down and not participating, advocating for something, but not having to deal with it. It's quite interesting. And so when you see these things, that's how you end up with 20 attorneys generals trying to block the chief executive of the United States. The CEO of America, for all intents and purposes, is now going to have a bunch of state-level attorneys general suing him on behalf of his own employees, trying to stop them. I've read the CFR. I actually looked at it. I think it's actually sitting on my phone right now. So let me just see if it's still up. I went looking for the CFR that was explaining exactly what goes on. Oh, God, I have some stuff on here about Sarah McBride, a.k.a. Tim McBride, the transgender person out of... that is out of Delaware. There's a CFR that I looked at a lot when I was working for the FBI. I think it's under 5U. It's part of the 5 CFR. CFR is Code of Federal Regulations. There are specific parameters under which you undertake your employment that you step in. There are 2 types of federal service. One is called accepted federal service, and the other one is called competitive. And you have different probationary periods, either 1 year or 2 year, depending on whether you're a veteran or whether you're in the accepted or whether you're in the this competitive piece. The crazy thing is this. It's part of the terms of your employment. If you walk into the door and you are working for the federal government, you agree to basically play by the rules of the federal government's employment system. One of the reasons why I have a decent lawsuit against the FBI right now is because they chose not to listen to any of that stuff. They didn't give the due process that is required when you're a tendered person. And at the end of the day, if they had fired all of the people and done it unilaterally and universally without discrimination, you wouldn't see me filing a lawsuit. I don't really care. I'm much happier living on my own life. What I do want is the government to be accountable to its own rules. But one of the rules that was always impressed upon you as a federal employee, they have this thing called the 1 week. The 1 week is the first week of federal employment, where they tell you the rules. They tell you what your benefits are. They tell you what the rules of probation is. They say whether you're a veteran or not, and they let you know when you sign up for all the things that you're going to do, and then you go out there and you do the job. And if you work at DOE, you probably do almost nothing. If you work at USAID, you're smuggling money for the CIA, whatever it is you do. When that all happens, you know that you've got basically 2 years, if you're a non-military veteran, that they can fire you for no reason at all, as long as they do so without doing it in a discriminatory way. This judge right now, and this is the real problem, we've got these activist judges that want to grab something. They want to get out there and act, even though the words of the Constitution in Article 3 say inferior courts, which are established from time to time. They are in their own verbiage, sort of a transitory thing. How can a transitory inferior court go after and withhold the ability of the president of the United States to do the job that he was elected to do? I don't get it. I don't like it. This has been tested before. I hope it is tested. I hope the Supreme Court comes down and says, this doesn't make any sense. They have actually sided with the inferior courts most recently. So that's not great. But you've got some small district judge named James Brader, who's in the District Court of Maryland, which is a lefty area. Didn't used to be, but it is for a long time now. Deciding whether or not 20,000 probationary employees that were recently fired by the Trump administration are actually going to be terminated, or whether or not they're going to block future firings, reinstate the probationary employees, because their claim is that there was some kind of procedural error. But from what I can read, that's actually not the case. So the only question is whether this guy's going to fairly evaluate the law. And right now, we don't think it's going to happen because we don't see these people operating fairly. Maybe it's because they are fundamentally operating from this lawless position. Let me give you a real lawless position. My absolute favorite, Dollar Store Cardi B. I've never listened to a Cardi B song, but I've seen her. She seems like a dollar store version of herself. Dollar Store Cardi B, a woman named Jasmine Crockett, who was a civil rights attorney in Dallas, who is not dumb, who lived in a very posh neighborhood, who went to an expensive college, $55,000+ a year, who went to very expensive private high schools, who is not a dummy, although she kind of sounds like one, even when she's being the most articulate she can be, who has chosen to sound as ghetto and kind of trashy as possible. She went on MSNBC and made the following argument, and this is maybe why we have such a problem in this country. The people can actually say in the same breath things that disagree with themselves. This is the fundamental issue that I find with leftists and not people who are liberal people that are on the left. I can argue with them. I think there's a value in having a liberal party and people that are more liberal than me. I think there's a value because it helps us remember that there are other human beings that we're not always right, or that we don't always have the entire story. And it makes us think about things. I think that's fair. America has constantly governed from the middle. The minute it gets too far to the right or too far to the left, we have real serious problems. We are obviously drifted off hard to the left to the point where we are putting men in dresses in the middle of Congress. And those people are offended on their behalf even. More on that later. But having a middle perspective is reasonable. And then you have this nonsense. And this is why the left is in crisis right now, because they cannot sell this perspective. Any reasonable person listens to this and goes, did you just say that breaking the law is not illegal? That's what she says. I'll let her do it in her own words. Ready?
It is not a criminal violation to enter the country illegally. It's not a criminal. It's a crime. It's not a crime, which is why they're so frustrated, because they really want our local law enforcement to go out and round up people when they could be looking out for the murderers and the sexual abusers as well as the robbers. They want them to go and round people up on civil accusations. And so that
First of all, every single arrest is always done on an accusation. It's done on a thing called probable cause. PC is a generation. It is not adjudicated to be true. It just means that there's probable cause to believe that it is. Reasonable suspicion, slightly higher than that, probable cause to believe. There's these levels, these gradients of knowledge. It's an accusation. When you accuse somebody of something, then you can go arrest them if you have enough probable cause to believe it. And then we're tried, and then we decide whether or not it's true beyond a reasonable doubt. That means people wouldn't doubt that it's true. So then we have said that it is true. This is she knows better than this. I know she does because she went to law school and I didn't. And she's not that dumb, even when she pretends to be. You guys saw the viral video we put out the other day where it actually showed that. It's gross to see this, but that inspires some really fun stuff. I don't think the Trump administration or even people within it are listening to this program, but if you'll remember what my idea was how do we get all of the illegals to self-identify and self-deport? That would be the biggest win. And the only thing you have to hold over them is if you don't do what we say, if you don't highlight yourself and leave on your own, then when we do find you, and we are going to find you, then you're never allowed back. They literally decided to do that. One of the biggest sort of nasty things that was going on during the Biden administration was this thing called the CBP-1 app, where people were able to book appointments to illegally come into the United States and then hang out here and abuse our asylum laws, abuse our migrant worker programs and something else. They've actually turned that around. It's a reverse weaponization. They are using the app for good. Exactly what I just said. I'll play that in just 1 second. I promise you that's where we're going to go next. Before we do, we're talking about things that are not great, things that happen. Just because we won doesn't mean that we shouldn't be preparing for other things going on. And one of the ways you can go do that is by getting emergency food. So I recommend my friends over at My Patriot Supply. And you can get there by going to preparelikekyle.com. This is actually a really good deal. I like this one. I have the bigger food packs for me and my wife, but this one is a pretty cool one. So you've seen it before. There's disaster strikes. You see that grocery shelves can go empty overnight. We all saw it during the COVID stuff. The worst time to prepare is during the aftermath, because then it's already too late. Smart Americans are using My Patriot Supply to help them prepare before a crisis comes. And right now you can do it easier than ever. You can order the 4-week emergency food kit. That's what you see on the screen there. And you get 4 72-hour food kits completely free. The thing I like about that is you can throw it into a vehicle so it becomes mobile. That's almost 2 weeks of bonus meals free, so almost 50% more at no cost. Each of these kits has over 2,000 calories per day. They've got easy-to-make meals that they can survive for up to 25 years, so you don't have to use them right away. You could use them for camping and stuff like that if you wanted to do it, but otherwise, you just hold on to them. They're kind of like an insurance policy. That's real peace of mind. There's no last-minute panicking, no empty shelves, just knowing that you're covered, knowing that you've got an option, knowing that you got breathing room if something bad were to happen in this country. You can stock up today before the deal disappears. Because when emergencies hit, the food is gone. It's almost always gone. That and toilet paper, we found out. Preparelikekyle.com. Again, preparelikekyle.com to claim your kit and get those extra 72-hour food kits along with it. Preparelikekyle.com. I'm going to get back to this video here. This app, I'm telling you, it's absolutely brilliant. I love that they decided to do this. This is a Fox News coverage again, so we'll grab that on there. They have some of the good news, and we always go to the other places for the bad news. This is Bill Manoogian basically breaking down the idea that we threw out here. Like I said, maybe a lot of people come up with it. Maybe it was equally brilliant. It was concurrent genius, we'll say. Here we go.
Well, breaking right now, the Trump DHS is launching a new self-deportation app for illegal immigrants, giving those in the U.S. illegally an incentive to cooperate. And Bill Manoogian is live in L.A. with more. Hi, Bill.
Dana, good morning to you. So this is pretty remarkable. The Trump administration has taken that controversial CBP-1 cell phone app for migrants that the Biden administration was using, and they've repurposed it into a self-deportation app that is officially launching today. And we're getting an exclusive first look at it. Take a look. The app is now called CBP Home. It allows illegal aliens in the U.S. to register to self-deport. They fill out biographical information, including their countries of citizenship, which country they plan to return to, their alien registration numbers, their contact information, and it allows them to upload photos of themselves to confirm their identity. All of it is then submitted to CBP, and they leave the country. Now, you might be asking yourself, well, why would an illegal immigrant want to self-deport? Well, DHS says if they leave now, they will have the opportunity to return to the U.S. legally in the future and chase the American dream. But if they don't leave, they will be found, arrested, detained, and deported with a permanent ban on entry into the United States. In a statement to Fox News, DHS Secretary Kristi Noem said in part, quote, the Biden administration exploited the CBP-1 app to allow more than 1 million aliens to illegally enter the United States. With the launching of the CBP Home app, we are restoring integrity to our immigration system.
Remember, they always do it by changing the language. Even Fox News is guilty of this. If you just listen, you heard Bill say that they are migrants, right? Migrants go home. Migrants can be part of a migrant worker program. That means you come here for a season to work, you make some money, and you go back home. We got no problem with that. There is a legal way to apply to do that. Showing up and just saying, hey, I want to live here forever because I like the United States better than my place. By the way, give me stuff and let me live in luxury hotels in New York City. That's not being a migrant. As our brilliant chat moderator said over on Rumble, Eric Jason mentioned, this is the GTFO app. Yeah, exactly right. Like, get the hell out of my country. What are you doing here? You didn't have a right to do that. You would never do that to any other country. You never would. None of us would. If you showed up somewhere, imagine going in anywhere in Western Europe, popping up and saying, hey, by the way, pay for me to hang out here because I've always wanted to see Paris in the springtime. It's not happening. You're going to get locked up and deported. You're probably going to end up in a French prison. Maybe they'll just feed you baguettes, which would not be the worst thing in the world. French bread is quite good. But the issue is that this should actually be considered a win for people on the left, too. It really should be. The lefties should be excited about the idea that we're going to have fairness, that we're going to let people who do want to come to this country, and all the people that they've been championing, the so-called immigrants, right? How about the people that came here legally? Why do they always ignore that? Why do they always go straight to the people that broke the law and act like they're the victims? I don't get it. A little more on what was talked about yesterday. One of the things we discussed, and I've got some mixed bag from you guys, whether or not you think somebody who is advocating on behalf of Hamas should be deported instantaneously, should have a green card revoked. There should be a process for that. That's what I'm getting at. There should be a process for free speech in this country. If we are going to be people who believe in civil liberties, if we believe that there's a certain inalienable rights, if we believe that Americans and people on American soil should be treated a certain way, then we don't want to see the government used aggressively and targeted just because we don't like their ideology. I have no problem with you guys, with anybody in the Trump administration deciding to send home, let's say, all the people who use the CBP-1 app. That's great. That's universal. It's unilateral. I got no problem with firing of all of the probationary employees across the spectrum. That's all fine. There's nothing discriminatory about that. If you're going to hone in on one type of speech, and that speech happens to be something that you don't like, whether it's because it's against Israel, whether it's because it's pro-Hamas, whether it's because it's BLM or anything else, that is not an American value. There are reasons you can target these people. There are reasons that you can find. But if there's not a big case behind this guy, we talked about this guy, Mohammed, or what was his name? Mahmed Khalid yesterday. He was arrested because of, or he was looked at deporting, and they pulled his green card because he was doing protests outside of Columbia University. At the end of the day, you don't want the government to be the arbiter of what is and is not good speech. I made that point yesterday. If you didn't see it, go watch the last 15 minutes of yesterday's podcast for sure. Download it if you want. You can see us on Apple. You can see us on Spotify, iHeartRadio, and so on. You can take it with you and just listen to those 15 minutes. Do it in 2x if you like. Your head will probably explode. But that being said, you don't want the government to be the arbiter of what is good or bad speech, because it can turn around and the next time somebody gets into power, they can use it against you. And we've already seen that done. What we should be doing is putting in place safety nets so we don't have that problem. Tom Cotton wrote an editorial for Breitbart that I think is problematic, and it shows very narrow and sort of short-term thinking. If we're simply going to be doing a chip shot game where everybody is chipping onto opposite sides of the green and we never make it to the hole, we never get to the idea of something that is good for everyone, we're problematic. And that is going to be the death knell of the republic. You cannot have people swinging aggressively from left to right every single time the power changes. Tom Cotton from Arkansas, he's a senator, proposed legislation on Tuesday, that was yesterday, that would tax quote-unquote woke universities and endowments and cancel student loans for criminal protesters. Look, there's all kinds of reasons why you can make people who are saying bad things, you can find all kinds of problems with them. And if they are in fact doing what's called material support of terrorism, there are elements of that crime. If we want to be people that nominally support the Constitution or actually support the Constitution, then we should believe in due process. And we do it for people that are legal permanent residents of the United States. If you have a green card, it's called an LPR, you have a right to be here for at least the time that you do. And if we're going to revoke it, it needs to be done properly. Otherwise, you're going to get people thrown out of government like Garrett O'Boyle. You're going to get people like me tossed out of government. Why? Because we had unfavorable opinions. This doesn't work well when you expand it. It's a thing I like to call the mirror test. There's probably another name for it. I'm sure psychological. Actually, it's kind of like the golden rule, right? Isn't this like the top commandment? It's biblical. What would you have done? Do as you would have others do unto you. Do to others as you would have done unto you. There we go. I got it out. Same idea. Hold a mirror up. If a woman comes up, who's my boss? This is a real story, of course. She comes up and she puts a hand on my shoulder and she massages my shoulder and says, "That's a really nice shirt on you, Kyle. You should wear it more frequently." Now I want you to imagine that a man does that to a woman. "Hey, Karen, that's a really beautiful blouse you're wearing. You should wear it more often." Is that a problem? If you think it's a problem, then why should the woman be able to do it? In the same way, if the left comes in and says, "You know what, we don't like that Kyle Seraphin has a picture of Ronald Reagan at his desk. That's not cool. In fact, the fact that he's riding a velociraptor and shooting Uzis in the air, that's offensive to us. So we don't want it. We're going to throw him out and take his security clearance." Real story, of course. Now turn around and do it the other way. Let's say you walk by somebody who just really thinks that FDR was the man, and they've got a picture of him riding a wheelchair, but the wheelchair also has rockets or nuclear weapons or whatever the hell you want on it. It's another cartoon. And you go, "That's an FDR fan. FDR was a commie. We want you out of here. We're going to pull your security clearance." Do you want that government? Do you want that kind of swing every 4 to 8 years in this country? Because I don't. And I don't want Tom Cotton creating something called the Woke Endowment Security Tax, also known as the West Act, which would specifically put a 6% excise tax on the endowment of not all universities, not all state-funded things, only 11 specific American universities. We are going to target things that we don't like specifically. That is problematic. That is not American. It's not how we do things. It's not fair. It's not equitable. And it's certainly not something that we can expand out across the board and say, yes, this is how we do business. In the same way, you can't say that tax cuts are paid for by stealing from children who make no money. You cannot say that we're going to go to these people and we're going to apply very, very narrowly a new law. By the way, I don't think this will pass. But you want to go out there and specifically tax Harvard, Yale, Stanford, Princeton, MIT, brought up earlier, University of Pennsylvania, Northwestern, Columbia, Washington University, Johns Hopkins, and Cornell. Those are the only people that you have a problem with in this entire country? You're going to single out 11 institutions because they have money? How about we don't put any money into universities because they can raise their own? The states can fund their own schools. The federal government has no business, has no equities in these things. That would be the right answer. The conservative position is do not fund private or public universities. Allow the states to do it. Period. And stop taking the money and using it in the DOE. All of the arguments for DOE, by the way, have to do with higher education and making it more accessible, and that's nobody's right in this country. You're not entitled to a college degree. That's why it doesn't mean anything. Our money is inflated because they printed more of it. Our university degrees are inflated and useful, like less and less and less as you get older. Why? Because they've made everybody get into it. Because Jasmine Crockett now has a law degree, and she may be retarded. She might not be that smart, even if she made it through all those schools, because you could actually pay your way through as long as your tuition's up. I know people that went to Harvard that were given C's and B's when they were not that bright. A good friend of mine, he was a Samoan guy. He was super, super fit. He was very strong. I once saw him rip a sink off a wall. Just pulled it right off. And George went to Harvard on an academic scholarship, even though he got D's in our math classes that we were in together when I was in high school. Why was that? He got an academic scholarship to play football for Harvard because they didn't want to lose as often as they used to. That's a real thing. That was a real thing in the 90s. So I'm just saying, if that's the case, pull tuition away from the federal government completely. That's the conservative position, far better than this alternative. That's my take on that. I'm not going to apologize for it. I refuse to apologize. That's just what we're going to do. Let's talk about something else I'm not going to apologize for. This is we don't always do products here, but you guys know that if I do rep a product, it's going to be a product that I'll actually use, and it changes my mind. This is pretty wild because the people who reached out from this company, one, they're special forces guys, so that's already my clan of people that I already have like an affinity towards. And two, I've been wearing the same type of underwear for about 16 years since I entered into the Air Force. I've basically worn the same thing for almost, coming up on 2 decades. And this has made me change my mind about what I'll spend my own money on. And yes, I spend my own money on it. I've got a cart full of it. If you guys want to check them out, you can do so at undertac.com. Promo code KYLE20. That'll save you 20% on anything on their website. When it comes to gear that can handle anything, there's no better choice than Undertac. It's designed for and tested by elite special forces teams in Africa's hottest conditions. I kind of wonder if one of my buddies' ODAs was involved in this. Undertac is made to perform where it matters most. If you're navigating tough terrain or you're just tackling your day, their underwear, their socks, and their shirts keep you dry, comfortable, and mission ready. I can attest to the infantry model. That's the one that they sent me, and I got to put those on, and I went like, holy moly. I actually wore it for like 6 hours and I didn't realize I had changed over. They've got another one that's called the Recon. It's a little bit more sports minded. It's kind of more like what we used to call Spanx when I was in the Air Force. Check those out. This stuff is made from premium materials like modal. It's going to have a 50% more moisture wicking capacity, higher than cotton, which is nice. It offers a tactical performance that goes way beyond the basics. It's ultra comfortable. Again, I can attest to it. I'll just walk around with them. They make a battle merino wool sock. You can also feel the difference in those. If you want to try out the hoodies or the EDCs, I don't know anything about the t-shirts yet. I haven't tried those, so that's on you guys. You can review them and let me know if you see something you like there. Rugged enough for anything, comfortable for every day. Undertac.com, promo code Kyle20. KYLE20. That'll give you 20% off site-wide, whether you're gearing up for an adventure or you just want to lounge around in some super comfortable boxer briefs. I've never been a boxer briefs guy, not in 20 years. And these guys are changing my mind. Plus, a portion of all their profits are going to support veteran organizations that fight human trafficking. So that's not just a no-brainer. That's a win-win for everybody. Check them out if you guys are so inclined. And, if you make the switch, let me know. Don't send me pictures. I don't want to see pictures, or do whatever. I don't care. I was a paramedic. You guys can't shock me with anything. Let's keep pushing on. I got some other things again. This was on every single news website. This was the top 2 stories on all of these. EU announcing $28 billion in countermeasures to Donald Trump's steel tariffs. The European Union has been tariffing the crap out of all kinds of American industries and has done it for a long time, basically since World War II. When the United States came in and helped set up the industry, we had the Marshall Plan. We helped rebuild a lot of Europe, which got destroyed. We were not destroyed because we were on the other side of the ocean. We actually profited. It helped bring us out of the Great Depression. And so the United States, I don't know whether it felt guilty or whether it was just the right thing to do for our trade partners, has been subsidizing Europe for quite a long time, and including all of their defense budget. We just saw them cave and say that they're going to put $800 billion of euros behind their continental defense in NATO. So Donald Trump won that one. This one also is going to have a short period of time where I'm sure it's going to be uncomfortable. And yet it's allowed talking points on the left to come out because I guess these people are like one-dimensional thinkers. They're the kind of people that never understood that you have to have delayed gratification to win. It's going to be a bummer. That's the nature of what happens when you do austerity measures, as we kind of mentioned earlier. You have to kind of bite the bullet. It's kind of like if you overspent for a month and then you decide that you're not going to be able to go out to dinner for a month or two afterwards to make sure you replete your savings, or you splurge on something. Like you're like, you know what? We had a disaster and our car failed. We needed a new vehicle. So we had to spend our money that we were saving for something else, and now we don't have that cushion. We ate some of the cushion up, so we're going to have to build the cushion again, which means we got to tighten our belts. Americans used to always know about this. This is Pod Save America. It's actually on my new follows list because they are the like in the top 30 podcasts in the country. And they're obviously all very, very hard on the liberal left. So this is their snarky take on how immediately these things should make you immediately mad at Donald Trump. They're actually playing to an audience that doesn't pay much attention. Like I think they're paying attention to only leftist talking points. So this is what's being marched out. It's worth knowing what the enemy has to say.
Hey, how's your 401k? Are you excited to pay more for shit because Donald Trump thinks the map would look cooler if Canada was a state? Do you think it's been too long since we've had a recession?
Are you expecting a recession this year?
I hate to predict things like that.
Cool. So the Trump folks are now just openly admitting that their trade war will have casualties, and those casualties will be us.
It may be a little bit of an adjustment period. There is a period of transition. And again, there'll be disruption. There'll be a little disturbance, but we're okay with that.
So what are they doing about it? Other than gutting cancer research, trying to fire air traffic controllers, screwing over veterans, and giving another $1 trillion in tax cuts to people who make over $750,000 a year. Well, Donald Trump and Sean Hannity have a plan. They're buying Teslas.
I'm going to go out. A friend of mine has a Tesla. I've driven it. I loved it. It's a great car.
That's right. The stock market is tanking for the third week in a row, but the only company Trump seems concerned about is Tesla, or as he calls it, Elon's baby, the one he likes the most.
I'm going to buy one. Now, here's the bad news. I'm not allowed to drive because I haven't driven a car in a long time.
Poor Elon has had a tough few weeks. Another one of his rockets exploded, there was a cyber attack on his shitty website, and the mean libs are boycotting Tesla.
Yeah, they're not just boycotting Tesla. They're actually burning down superchargers because people who are on the hard left decide to use things that are not legal means of getting their political point across. It's actually used to be called terrorism when you do that kind of stuff. And one of those things that we're kind of watching is what's happened with InfoWars and the people in Austin, Texas. I don't know that this is related yet, but we're kind of keeping an eye on it. I don't like anything that guy had to say. Again, it's very short term. If you look at Elon Musk's stock, yes, it's gone down. It's like $230 when I looked at it this morning. But if you go back a year ago, it was like $130. So it's still up about 70% from where it was. So maybe just these people don't understand their short-term gratification people, their narrow scope window, and calling X a quote-unquote shitty website is pretty wild considering it swings the opinions of many politicians. So whether they like it or not, it's a place where you have to actually work. And if you don't like it, it's probably because you're not good at it. You're probably not good at sharing ideas. Whenever we hear these things, we did the Sam Sater interview yesterday, or the Jubilee podcast, where you put one female out there that understands basic arguments that says, hey, there's a dominant culture in America and it's always been Western and Christian. And if you try to argue against it and you have no arguments, or if you're Jasmine Crockett, like we played earlier, and you say, listen, just because they broke the law doesn't mean what they did was illegal. If you make things that, like in their own sentences, don't agree with you, you have the problem that hard leftists have, which is that their ideas run into their own ideas at full speed. That's just what happens. Kind of like my father-in-law used to do this game. We used to have this fun game where I would just ask him questions until his ideas didn't make sense anymore. So he would tell me things like, you can't trust the police. And I go, oh, okay, fine, I'll play. Why not? And he'd be like, well, they're only interested in themselves. It's like, how do you figure that? He's like, well, they're interested in the next promotion. They're only interested in getting enough like arrests so that they can get the next, whatever. Okay, so self-interest. Got it. Okay, so they're corrupt because they're self-interested. Okay, cool. Tell me about gun control. And he'd be like, yeah, like there's no reason that anybody should own these firearms. And I'm like, okay. So what you think is that the police are corrupt and they're only interested in themselves, and that the American citizens shouldn't own guns. The only people who should own them are the people that you said are corrupt. How does that make sense for you? And then they go, blah, 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 and they just make noise. Like Alex Jones style make noise, but like without less of the globalist accuracy. So one of the things I'm a little worried about is watching this thing, because I live in near Austin. I live outside of Austin, and I'm seeing this story. This is an InfoWars reporter who was just murdered this week. His name's Jamie White. Truly a tragic story. The family's talking about what was. It's not real clear what happened, whether it was a targeted attack or whether it was like just a robbery gone bad. Either way, it's an indication that policies in the city of Austin, which are atrocious, and this was like the 8th homicide, were only like in March. There were times when I used to live here, because I started coming to Austin. I used to come down in when I was in high school for a little while. My wife went to college here, and then we started dating in 2009. And so I started coming to Austin pretty frequently in 2009 onward. And there were years when there were only like 8 or 9 homicides for the entire year. We're only in the first quarter and we have that situation. The robbery gone bad thing is bad. The second piece of it is I talked to Chase Geiser, who he had 2 swatting calls on him. It's called Travis County. That's the county that Austin resides in. So he lives in Travis County. He had deputies show up 2 times and called him out at gunpoint at 2 a.m. And I just spoke to him this morning about it. And of course, he's shaken up. The casualty is like family and wife and kids. But we're talking about someone who's used like a weaponized government. This is the reason why government has to remain in check. If you're swatting somebody, what you're saying is I know that I could abuse the tools that exist for our safety. And that's the problem that I keep seeing these leftists do. One of the great abusers of this is a guy who is one of the laziest people. He's one of the laziest thinkers. And his name is Bernie Sanders. For some reason, he's the hero. He's the hero of the story. You're hearing people from, this is Pod Save America again. I went down to like this thing called the crooked media. That's what they're called, crooked media. So they have this whole like chain and channel of information. They walked out to a Bernie Sanders rally, which is apparently still going on. They're still having Bernie Sanders rallies. I hope they run an 83-year-old communist again, because the alternative is going to be like a 50-something-year-old communist named Gavin Newsom. And I would love to see the 2 commies duke it out, because then we still win. I hope. This is a man saying there's only one person who can save America, and that person is apparently Bernie Sanders. You guys listen to this, see if you feel the burn.
There's only one man in America who speaks for working, middle-class, ordinary people. His name is Bernie Sanders.
His name is Bernie Sanders, and he's here today. What brings you to the rally today?
Democracy. Oh, I love that. I'm here to support the opposition to what's happening.
I was just excited to see him. I wasn't expecting that many people.
If this is the only thing we can do, we can make the calls, we can do the protests, we can come out to this rally.
Things are getting to the point where you can't just ignore it. And I've been really appreciating Bernie. I feel like he just really talk out about it.
Well, there was a band playing. Oh, you came for Armed?
Yeah,
we know them pretty well. That was not the experience of several other people we talked to. Did you support Bernie in the past or always? I don't think he can run anymore, but the movement he started.
He barely can walk anymore is really the story here. But the guy's been in politics for, again, 40-something years. He's been in for longer than I've been alive. He first got elected to be a mayor in 1980. So you're talking about a guy who, you know, the story I've heard the same ones you have, that he was too lazy and got kicked out of a commune, that he was apparently a carpenter. I read that he was, for a couple of years, he was working for a documentary film company. And in the entire time he was there, he was able to produce a 30-minute documentary. I could do that today. For whatever it's worth, I have filmed and created hour-long, 2-hour-long sit-down conversations with people and done it in a day with probably more camera angles than Bernie Sanders' documentary. I mean, it's just, this stuff is silliness. You're going to have that guy go, but have him sit down and start talking. Like I said, he can't run anymore. He can barely walk. Here he is. He's going to tell you about the millionaires and the billionaires. He drops out the millionaires part now. That used to be part of his shtick. His shtick was that it was first it was millionaires, then it was millionaires and billionaires, then he became a millionaire and they were no longer a problem anymore. Here he is talking about the same exact thing that you hear Randy Weingarten talking about, because they always have this idea that other people's money actually belongs to them. It made me start researching and looking into, again, the deadly sins. I'm going to talk about the 7 deadly sins and see how many of them we can line up underneath the ideology that you're about to hear from.
These are, the scariest times in my lifetime. That's all. I mean, I think that's objectively the truth. It is not just they want to give tax breaks to billionaires and cut programs for working people. Frankly, that's happened before. Yeah. But you combine that with the power of the oligarchy in general. You combine that with Mr. Musk owning Twitter and able to send out his messages to hundreds of millions of people. You combine that with the fact that people like Bezos, the second wealthiest person in the country, fired or got rid of most of his editorial staff and is going to convert them into a right-wing thing. Combine that with the fact that Trump is suing major media outlets and is threatening to investigate PBS and NPR. So it's not only the power of money, it's also combined with that, the movement toward authoritarianism.
Yeah, no evidence given, just my feelings. By the way, they had no problem with Jeff Bezos when he was supporting them. The only issue would be that he wants to actually make money and try to centralize something like the Washington Post. So that's a really big issue. Let's go to the 7 deadly sins. Lust, not really. Gluttony, probably not. Greed, that's a good one. Greed is when you want all these things. He's a millionaire. He has 3 houses. Is that greedy? I don't know. How many of you have 3 houses? I don't begrudge you them. How many of you have 3 houses and you spent 50 years working only in politics with a fixed salary? That's another more useful question for you. All right. How about sloth? People who are too lazy to work in a commune. Those seem like kind of a slothful thing. He actually does kind of hustle right now. I don't know if hustling and being a kind of a criminal who's able to scam money from people, I don't know if that is the same thing, but sloth is definitely on the list. Wrath, I regularly hear Bernie Sanders. What is the feel the burn? He's angry. He's very, very angry. He's mad about the thing he's mad about the thing that he's doing. I think wrath probably fits in there. And envy and pride are on there. So the only things I don't see are gluttony and lust. I see 5 of the 7 deadly sins that are pretty prominently represented in the things we're talking about. And maybe that sort of demonic influence, that thing where you open the door up for evil to come into your life, and that's what the 7 deadly sins are. There are 7 ways that you can invite the devil into the way you live your life. I think when you do that, you probably end up with some of the craziest things in the world. Like you get really pissed off and you lose your mind because a man wearing a dress is referred to as Mr. I don't think that Bernie Sanders is a solution for anybody, but I'm excited to see them run him out there or trot him out there or celebrate him, because more of that and more of this, where a guy named Tim McBride, who now goes by Sarah McBride, who is dressed up as a lady and gets called Mr. because he's got the twig and berries, when that dude, because he was born the way that I was born, he just chose to be an effeminate weirdo, when that guy is getting outrage from regular men. Regular dudes look around and they go, "You won't call that man a woman? I'm furious at you." You get this. This is performative nonsense, and it's coming from CBS, which makes it even more fun. And then you're also going to have black women who are very, very angry about it as well. For some reason, actual women are mad about men being in woman face. I cannot imagine. I can't remember this woman's name now. Gail something or other. Gail King, maybe. Imagine Gail King getting really pissed off that somebody didn't refer to somebody as black because they wore blackface. Because that's pretty much the actual, like, literal equivalent between these two things here. That's my take on it. Here's CBS Mornings.
A congressional hearing on arms control and U.S. assistance to Europe ended abruptly yesterday after Texas Congressman Keith Self referred to transgender Congresswoman Sarah McBride as Mr. McBride, and then another member came to her defense. Take a listen.
I now recognize the representative from Delaware, Mr. McBride.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Would you repeat what you just said when you introduced a duly elected representative from the United States of America, please?
I will. The representative from Delaware, Mr. McBride.
Mr. Chairman, you are out of order. Mr. Chairman, have you no decency? I've come to know you a little bit, but this is not decent.
We will continue this hearing.
You will not continue it with me unless you introduce a duly elected representative the right way.
This hearing is adjourned.
Well, last night, McBride wrote on X, quote, "No matter how I'm treated by some colleagues, nothing diminishes my awe and gratitude at getting to represent Delaware in Congress."
I love how she is handling this, and it made me so sad to see that display. And I love the congressman that came to her defense. This is a place where we are in this country, though.
That's right.
Yeah, please continue more of that, CBS. Please try to normalize the marginalization of women by women. You notice how she said, "I love how she handled that." Did you also notice that Tim, aka, here we go. Let me throw it up on the screen here. That's Tim to Sarah. Those are the two side-by-side pictures of when he used to dress like a man, and now he's grown his hair out, and he wears glasses, and he wears feminizing makeup. Same dude. Always looked like a little bit of a wimp. By the way, from what I can tell, was married. I'll use that in air quotes because I don't actually believe in that either. Was married to someone for like 5 days. Married another gay rights activist person who ended up dying like a couple days into their partnership. That's kind of sad. I don't want anyone to die. But just even using the marriage ceremony for something like that, there's nothing beautiful about that. There's nothing great. There's nothing redeeming. It's how you end up. And did you notice Tim, aka Sarah, aka Mr. McBride, said chairwoman? Did you hear that part? Thank you, ma'am. To a man. It's all snark. It's the same thing that like snarky gay men said. I actually started, I kind of follow Milo Yiannopoulos a little bit. And the other day he announced something on X as well. You know, that shitty website that Elon Musk has that these people said is a really big deal, including Bernie Sanders, where he could talk to millions and millions of people. And Milo said, "I am not gay," in all caps. It's like, bro, but aren't you? Pretty sure you are. And the one thing I know about gay men, because I've been around plenty of gay men in my life, just like many of you have, they're real snarky and catty. And they do this kind of thing. I don't know why it's like that. Just saying. This guy could have been a perfectly happy. Nobody would have cared about it. Most conservatives at this point accept that you are the thing you are. Your sins are your own sins. We're not here to judge you. We're going to worry about the beam in our own eye if we're doing it right. We want what's best for you, and we think what you're doing is not best for you, but it's not our business necessarily to get out there and try to stop you per se. But if you're going to be a dude who dresses like that, and I hear a man's voice coming out of like what looks like a woman, and you want to go into the bathroom with my little girls, you might get a stiff arm. I might treat you like a man trying to walk into the women's bathroom. Because that's what my job is. My job, number one, is husband, and number two is dad. And both of those are protective roles. If you can't figure that out, keep losing, y'all. You heard that brought up there. We're talking about money to Ukraine. So let's go ahead and cover that real quick. The United States has apparently been able to help push forward a ceasefire agreement for 30 days so they could try to negotiate peace. The real question is whether or not Russia will sign on to it. We've had years of demonizing Russia done by the Biden administration. That doesn't mean Russia's the good guy. It just means that if you want to go to the table, as Donald Trump has said multiple times, you can't go out there and say this guy's a psychopath and he's super dangerous and nothing you can do about it. And then say, hey, but by the way, will you show up at the table and sign off on this? That's not what that works. So you've got this announcement here. Let's see. I think I got Marco Rubio talking about it over, I think, on Fox as well. So we'll throw this up on the screen. They're making the announcement. It's not a bad thing. Mike Wall's sitting next to him.
Today, we made an offer that the Ukrainians have accepted, which is to enter into a ceasefire and into immediate negotiations to end this conflict in a way that's enduring and sustainable and accounts for their interests, their security, their ability to prosper as a nation. I want to personally we both want to thank the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, His Majesty, for hosting us, for making this possible. They've been instrumental in this process, and we're very grateful to them for hosting us here today. And hopefully we'll take this offer now to the Russians. And we hope that they'll say yes, to peace. The ball is now in their court. And but again, the president's objective here is, number one, above everything else, he wants the war to end. And I think today Ukraine has taken a concrete step in that regard. We hope the Russians will reciprocate.
At the end of the day, who cares what the Ukrainians think? It's almost like if your child is negotiating with somebody else's parent, and then you step in and do the negotiation, and you don't turn to the child and say, "Do you also agree to this thing that we've just done?" Like, no, the parents need to talk. And at this point, we've been fighting a proxy war with Russia, using Ukrainian soldiers, using all of our money that gets stolen by a huge percentage from what we can tell. It all gets sent over there. The United States has the biggest interest in it and continues to. Without the United States, there is no war there. It's just over. Russia wins for whatever they want. So hopefully they come to the table, in so much as I don't want to see men dying. I really don't. I signed up to be in the military with the same idea. You're going to serve your country. There's a lot of people that are getting scripted. I had people that had been on the front lines or working in the TRADOC, which is the training part of the Ukrainian military, come to my house, come physically here and sit down and tell me that they are getting inadequate training. They are getting set up for disaster. And these men are basically in tears, and their life expectancy is less than a day when they're thrown out there on the front lines. That's horrific. So we shouldn't be rooting for that. What we should hope is that we do have peace, whatever those terms are. And the United States doesn't need to defend interests that are not ours. They're not our ally. They're not in NATO. We don't have any treaty obligations to them. The verbal stuff, get it in writing next time. Get it with a real treaty that's passed by Congress. It's yet another reason that if the United States doesn't do business the way that it's set up, the president's supposed to negotiate treaties, and then they are supposed to be signed into and signed onto by our Congress. And if we don't do it that way, then you're going to get all this garbage. You're going to get things that don't stick. You're going to get that ratcheting back and forth from left to right because it's just policy. Policy can be changed, it turns out. It's not ideal. Let me see. I think I got one or two more things in here. The big fear tactic that I've been loving, and many of you have been seeing this as well. This is a great article. I see articles about measles every single day at this point. Every day. The measles is unlike any other virus. What we need to know about the long-term complications, so saith our friends over at NBC News. I went and pulled a graph that I wanted to see. This is U.S. measles mortality rates on the screen right now. This is the rate of death per 100,000 in the population. It starts on the far left, closest to me, at 1900. You'll see that there's roughly like 12 deaths per 100,000. It stays in that range between 12 and 8 for about 20 years, with a spike somewhere around 1916. And then you have kind of a drop down to about 4 in 1920. It plays up to about 10, and it slowly trickles down until you get into the 1950s, where it is less than 1 death per 100,000. And by the time 1960 hits, it's almost 0 deaths per 100,000, which is to say measles was effectively eradicated. It did not have a mortality rate in the United States And then they introduced the measles vaccine in 1963. And from then on out, there have been a very, very, very small number. We talked about it the other day. You can't even measure it in deaths per 100,000. You have to measure it in deaths per million. And I did so with the CDC's own data. It's somewhere between 2.8 and 3.9 deaths per million, which is to say that it doesn't even make it on this graph. And yet, it's unlike every other virus, supposedly, to the point where it basically has a mortality rate of none. Here's the world graph, by the way, going back to 1980. Across the world annually in 1980, approximately or close to 800,000 deaths worldwide. We are now underneath 75,000 deaths worldwide. From 800,000 down to 75,000, that is what, like 1,000% decrease, if not more, maybe an 1,100% decrease. It is dropped precipitously to 2021. So when you have tiny little spikes, and by the way, there was a spike in Romania in 2015 and 2016. There were spikes in Italy around that time as well. There were spikes in 2004 in other countries. A lot of them have to do with people coming from these shitty parts of the world. There's no other way to say it. Donald Trump called them shithole countries. I will as well. When you took people from these crappy parts of the world that are backwards and have no sanitation and they have really bad hygiene practices, and you bring them into modern worlds and have all these migrant populations. I'm using the word migrant sort of in air quotes here. When you have illegal immigrants or people that are like basically fleeing from humanitarian reasons into more civilized areas, you're going to have it bump up. And the native population is very little affected. In any case, the numbers are not there. So the fact that we're seeing over and over this like cry from the mainstream media that measles is somehow a deal, when 100 people, more people fall downstairs and die in the United States, for whatever it's worth. More people are beaten to death with fists and hands by a factor of about 8 than people die from measles in the United States. Just so you understand, the people that you know around you, their hands and their fists are more dangerous to you than the measles, statistically speaking, by a lot. Like it's not even close. As long as you keep these things in mind, 100 people dying sounds really crazy. Until you evaluate 350 million people, it's statistically zero. It's not even a rounding error. It is so far and so small as to be infinitesimal. It is lottery type odds, lightning strike type odds. I just wanted that to be really clear because as I keep reading this media stuff, I keep seeing that there. All right, the last boogeyman, if it's not going to be measles, it should be, I wonder if I still have the thing on my soundboard on here. I do. Check this out. Ready?
Project 2025.
Project 2025. It's still out there and it's still scaring the Dems. The key Project 2025 authors are now staffing the Trump administration. God forbid the conservative people who are the thinkers that worked in think tanks. Think tanks are essentially holding grounds. They're incubators for people that are between political jobs. Russ Vought is he's a great example of that, rather. I don't know where I just skitzed out to. Russ Vought was working inside the Trump administration. Then he went and started a thing called the Center for Renewing America. They hired my friend Steve Friend. They fired my friend Steve Friend for being my friend because Russ Vought and I don't apparently get along. Although I've only talked to him a few times and it was very cordial. They just don't like my take on some other things. So they decided, God forbid, Kyle Seraphin say what he thinks. Like they somehow have some sort of leverage on me. Anyway, now he's back at OMB. He's back in there, and he's one of the key architects of Project 2025. So those authors who were in these incubators, who wrote a thing for the conservative think tank Heritage Foundation, are now in the Trump administration. God forbid. This has caused a couple of different websites to go out there and freak out about it, which makes me laugh quite a bit. So there you go. This is the most soft and gentle and academic human being. There is nothing scary or dangerous about Russ Vought, other than the fact that he abandoned his wife and their child with cerebral palsy, she has a serious disability. He divorced his wife and left her. That's not crazy. That's not very conservative of him. But other than that, other than to his own family, he's certainly not like a big threat to anybody in America, as far as I can tell. The fact that they want less abortions, that they want to bring back lawn darts. I may have made that part up, but I do want them to bring back lawn darts. I think it's probably good for people. Very, very few deaths from lawn darts, too, by the way. About the same number of deaths from lawn darts as measles. Not a very threatening thing. The whole idea that Project 2025 was demonized is amazing to me. So they're going to trot this out. So you're going to trot out Bernie Sanders, a guy in his 80s. He's going to solve America's problems. He's the only person that's for workers. You're going to trot out a Jasmine Crockett who says that things that are illegal are not actually illegal. And you're going to trot out demons like Donald Trump has gone after, and billionaires are a real problem because Elon Musk is going to steal your Social Security, and Russ Vought is going to implement Project 2025 because he's now in the Trump administration, even though Donald Trump disavowed it and said he didn't read it. I bet he didn't read it. It's really long. I didn't read it either. I scanned it and went, meh, who cares? Doesn't matter. Not that important. He was a principal author of 2025. He was Trump's pick to run the Office of Budget and Management. The Office of Management and Budget. Got it backwards. He did it in his first and second term. He wrote a chapter that outlined the overhaul of the executive branch and a focus on federal agencies serving the president's agenda. God forbid. You know, the thing that they really, really, really love on the political left. He referred to OMB as the president's air traffic control system and said that they are, in fact, the keepers of the commander's intent. None of this stuff is wrong, by the way. How could you argue otherwise if you read the Constitution, this thing that these people give nominal credit to? I think we're going to do more on the CR tomorrow because I kind of want to see how the vote plays out in the Senate. We're going to cover that on it. But the idea that the executive branch would serve the president because it is part of the executive branch, and the only part of the executive branch that's mentioned in the Constitution specifically is the commander-in-chief, is that person known as the U.S. president. I don't get it. Again, these are losing arguments. I encourage them to continue making them. You can appeal to all the federal workers in the United States. You're only appealing to 3 million people, and apparently the sycophants that want to pay more in taxes. So we got that. As usual, I broke our time limit. I wanted to go 60 minutes. I ended up going 70. That's the nature of the beast. I do want to thank all of you that have joined us. We're going to do more of it tomorrow. We'll have Friendly Friday on, so we'll get some Steve Friend on there. If you're following us on Rumble, make sure you've liked this video. That actually does make a big difference. It boosts it up in the algorithm so people can find it. You can find us rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. You can find us on X and on YouTube at Kyle Seraphin. And if you're on YouTube and if that's where you like to get things, go check us out over there. We've just gotten monetized again, so we're back into the space there. And I watched a bunch of people have joined. So thank you who have joined us over on YouTube. Here, I've got some people from YouTube right there. There you are. There's the YouTube chatters. You've got our Rumble chat on the other side. I cannot integrate them, but you guys, even though you are separate, you're equal in my hearts. And if you're listening and you're like, hey, I'm really sick of the pop-up ads and I don't want to pay Kyle for monetization of it, I have no problem with that. Go over to Spotify and look for it. You can actually use the cheat code KyleSeraphinshow.com. That's also in the show description. Click through that, add us on Spotify, do the download, do the stream, whatever you like. You'll get the video or the audio, both or either. You can dance between them because the app is free. We don't charge anything over there, so by all means, check that out. That's what I got for today. I want to say God bless you. I want to say thank you for all of you who have joined us. I really do appreciate it. Thanks to our chat mods who show up every morning and get there. Every day when I'm putting the show together, I go look at the chat after about an hour of the stream being scheduled, and I see there's like hundreds of you in there that are just going back and forth about God knows what. So I think it's awesome. I think the community we built here is really special, and I think it's as good as anything on the internet, and that's because you guys are out there doing it. So thank you for being part of the audience, because this doesn't work if we don't have you. All right. Have a wonderful day on this Thursday. I look forward to seeing you again in the morning. Friendly Friday with Steve Friend. And God bless you. We'll see you then.
Thanks for listening to The Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram at Kyle Seraphin.